And we're back. Welcome back to the Weekly Roundup, the place where we unpack what's been going on in the yoga, boutique, fitness, studio, wellness world over the last week and what we've been coaching our clients through. I'm here with Coach Bridget, Coach Carol. I'm Josh, and let's kick it because been kind of a big morning talking client talking client shenanigans
Yeah, we already
already.
did a whole roundup with like before.
Uh, one of the cool things about this team, I think, for coaching, and I've experienced this having been a solo coach myself for years prior to, is our ability to have a hive mind where like us coaches can jump on, even just in our Slack channel, but like we can jump on a Zoom meeting and hash out like, how do we handle this situation? Because despite having done this for well over a decade and us collectively seeing thousands of studios, it's like there's still like, well, what do you do with this? There's just some random shit that comes up. So I think that's really empowering because rising tide rises all ships. It helps us all make sure
100%.
that we keep you guys moving in the right direction as clients. Huh. Drop-ins. You guys have heard me say before, we had a joking rule in my studio, but like also not joking, you know? Uh, if you say the word drop in before a student does, you're fired.
Yeah.
And the idea being like, we don't sell drop ins. Now, technically, do you sell drop ins? Yes, of course you do. But we're not going to actively sell a drop in. Like, there's no scenario where I'm like, you know what you should do, Bridget? A single class. Like, it just doesn't actually make any sense.
Yeah.
So that's so ingrained, I think, in us as a group, and we all share that viewpoint. That then one of the surprise things that's come up a few times over this last year has been someone who doesn't see it that way. Bridget, I'll let you maybe jump into some commentary on this. But yeah, it's floored me a couple times.
Well, it does, it makes sense that if you don't think it all the way through and you don't really understand what we call monthly recurring revenue and how important that is to your business, if you haven't really seen that and integrated that, then the drop-in hit is like exactly that. Oh, bye, Josh. It's like this hit because it's it looks like more money when you just look at it on the screen. You're like, okay, well, everyone's an unlimited member, so nobody paid for this class except for this one person that paid $30, which is not true. But it's very easy to understand how that is, like how that looks. You can look up in your system. You can go back, and you should be pretty easy to go back and look at um, everyone who bought a drop-in over the course of the last year for you, and every member you have. I might need Josh and Carol to jump in here and help me with remembering the math, but you can figure out exactly how much your drop-in customer is worth to you over the course of a year and how much your members are worth to you over the course of the year. And I saw someone else do this actually in a different forum, so this is not my original idea, but if you are struggling with this, it's very easy to look and prove to yourself that your your unlimited members or your limited members even are worth much more to you per class over the course of the year than your drop-in people are. That's all I had.
Yeah, it's the lifetime value, right? So the idea that somebody's going to come in one time and then that, yes, in that moment, like you're saying, like the mentality is, I'm getting so much for that class. That one person is paying so much, but long term, it doesn't pan out that way, is exactly what you're saying. And I mean, for a long time, that wasn't a thing. Monthly recurring revenue was not a thing way back when we started, right? We had like the 1 month unlimited that somebody had to buy again and again. And we had our 10 class card. And I don't think we ever did a 20 or 25 class card, but that was kind of the basics of the yoga studio packages, a single 10 class, 1 month unlimited, not recurring. and maybe a year, annual stuff like that. So, but now, we have the curse of knowledge. We know better. And so I can't, just like you're saying, if you're looking at lifetime value and you're looking at the client's experience too over that year, single class is not going to be the person that comes back and again, most likely it's going to be your monthly recurring
Yeah,
students.
they
So
don't have any, yeah, they don't have any incentive to come back.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
they do have an incentive because hopefully your class was amazing, but like there's nothing pulling them back in any way because it's one and done. Like
Mhm.
they've paid for their drop-in. Yes, it's like if you look at your average person who buys a drop-in, they are worth pennies to you over the course of the year versus the average person who buys a membership. And that's good because we want our pricing to reflect the behavior that we want our clients to have in our studio. And we all know that a transformative yoga practice or Pilates practice or bar practice does not come from a class and a half a year or whatever the average drop-in customer um, makes.
Yeah. Well, I think that's the most important point too. Like, we're not talking about margin on a per unit pricing. That's not the name. It's a service business that is selling transformation, whatever your product is. If you're selling cookies, then it's like you're not you're not trying to set the system up that you're selling 4 cookies per person per month. Like that's not the same objective from a margin standpoint because that's not the type of product it is. So you need to maximize the dollars, the profit margin per cookie sort of thing. It's just different than product. And we've seen it in the industry where larger, uh, usually corporate funded organizations try a different model. They go after a different thing. F45 is a good example. They really have gone after and went after the like maximize the dollars per person on the floor. And that worked if you look at it from the perspective that like the brand grew and then they got bought out by a large VC and then whatever. And it's like a public play. But that's a completely different game that you're playing. And also, let's just be honest, this is not about F45 specifically, but like that model isn't reality. This is like it's a weird money fucking movement model. It's not reality of health on a single studio level, what works and pays you as an owner and makes margin and has a valuable business. They are not the same thing. So you can't really look at it as an example. But the point would be, what is the outcome for the client that you're trying to achieve and what would support that? Because your pricing is part of your communication. What's the outcome for you ultimately that you're looking for? If you only sold drop-ins, you would make a high margin per class, but then you would constantly have to chase everyone down for that next dollar, which
Yeah.
is here's the funny part too, actually, is like in the yoga world, especially where there's a pretty strong reluctance towards selling at all, even if like despite our training being, we call it soulful sales, like it's so easy and very respectful and soft and not the used car salesman thing at all. And still people are like, despite that, the logic is, but then I'm going to sell only drop it. Like I'm going to sell drop-ins, which means I have to sell someone something every
Every
single time they visit. That doesn't make sense. Those are
Yeah.
incongruent. Yeah.
And then you're stuck every single class staring at your phone, being like, I hope my capacity is, or, I hope
Yeah.
my class is filled up. And that's every single class all day long, all year long, like that's a nightmare. And
Yeah.
it's not how a good sustainable business is built.
We just don't, we just don't, I've never seen it work. That's the bottom line. Like
Mhm.
in every business I've ever looked at behind the scenes, if we see someone who's prioritizing that in 100% of cases, it's so obvious that they're leaving tens of thousands of dollars a month on the table by following that mentality of like trying to sell more drop-ins. It's as simple as that. Maybe there's a business out there that could prove me wrong, but like I haven't seen it. What this shakes out to though is you get two weird drop-in things. Like it's funny to just talk about a drop-in as like this isolated whatever, but it really like influences so many other things with the sort of mentality that's associated with this. What ends up happening is that then if you're trying to sell drop-ins, then in the yoga world, we commonly hear the owners say like, well, I want my yoga to be more accessible through pricing. So then their solution is they drop the price of their drop-in. But the drop-in sets the like precedent. That's the bar for the top value per class.
Yeah.
Unless you have surge pricing, but that's the top value for your class. So if you start pushing that down, you're charging $16 for a drop-in, like then everything else has to go below that. And basically you just shoot yourself in the foot. You undermine all of your pricing.
Yeah. Exactly.
We there was a brand that I was working with that they didn't have total pricing control. This is one of the difficulties of being a franchise. And so we came up with the pricing model for them, but they had to get it approved and some of it got denied. And one of the things that got denied was we wanted to increase the price of their drop-in as part of the overall strategy. And what the letter they got back was like, no, we want to sell a bunch of drop-ins because we make more margin, we make more money off the drop-ins. Like, why would we do that and deter that? And I was like, this is a studio that their retention rate, first visit to second visit, was like below 50%, and their like intro sale rate, same thing. Like this just insanity. So
yeah.
Weird stuff. Here's the path. Maybe this segues us to the next subject anyways. I think the path, if you're looking at a business, if you're looking at a boutique fitness, wellness, studio, classes, whatever, we're always solving for cash flow first. If you have positive cash flow, you will feel better about your business, period. It sucks to constantly have to chase money down. Then that becomes your focus. So cash flow is king in the beginning, especially. That means you're going after MRR. So you need to sell something that recurs. It's probably a monthly membership of some sort. It's like your goal sale.
Yeah.
Every business we see that makes a switch from a model that isn't focused on that to that, over the next 12 to 24 months, their total revenue goes up every single time. So so I think you do. So yeah, you do cash flow first. Then the second thing you would optimize for would be lifetime value. There is a point in a studio where you're like, my cash flow is where I want it to be. It's good. I have X number of members creating that scenario. And so maybe I could grow it another 10 or 20%, but the effort required to do that is exponentially harder. Like it's the 80-20 rule. Like I've gotten to the place where for my market and what's happening and all the efforts we've done, you get a sense of like, it's kind of calibrated here. Then you're going after lifetime value. So then it's like maintain that. And now if the average value per client per annum in your studio is $100, like make it $5. How do you do that? So there's a little different strategy that's there. Once you start working on that, then you would maybe look at dollars per person on the floor. The asterisk being the only other time you'd look at it is if you is when your capacity is used up.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, exactly.
Like you do have to pay attention to that number in general based off of your capacity because it's a function of capacity.
Yeah. I would also just add as an important just practical step if you do want to move away from drop-ins to intro, or like if you do want to move away from drop-ins, is to price your intro like a no-brainer. Like you just have to make it so that like that person who, I was working with a studio recently and their drop-in was like 20. And I was like, 20? these days, I'm sorry, is nothing. Like
Nothing.
it's just like nothing. I would
Yeah.
totally choose a drop-in even if I really liked your studio. If it was 20 bucks, you got me. Like I'm buying the drop-in. And so you got to up your drop-in and then make your intro so obvious. That's how you can make people's intro into yoga accessible. If you want to make your product more accessible, it's way more accessible to give them, you know, a free or a first month or a first 2 weeks or 3 weeks or whatever it is at a really great price. That's how you make yoga for everybody. Um, yeah, so that's just a practical little shift to make as well.
You know what's funny is that sometimes we get the comment too. They're like, "Well, I don't want to increase the price of my drop-in because I don't want to like charge people too much, or I don't want to like be too expensive, or I still want to be accessible." But then we're like, "Cool, let's lower the price of your intro.
Hmm.
Like your drop-in's 20 and your intro is 79." And we're like,
Hmm.
"Let's try a cheaper intro." Well, no, that would be too cheap.
Yeah,
Like
exactly. Yeah,
I don't know.
yeah,
It's
it's
a
a
funny
pretty
thing.
thing.
There's no shade. I'm just saying like it's a perspective shift. It's a whole like philosophy of approach, mentality, viewpoint, angle change that you have to go to when you're looking at that sort of stuff.
Exactly.
I think a big one
Hmm.
too is when we start to suggest, like, if a guest comes in or a buddy comes in, treat them as if they bought the drop-in
Hmm.
and then
Yeah.
just charge a difference like that. Even to me as an owner at first, I was like, that would make the intro like $19. That's crazy.
Yeah.
But you know, it does go back to that philosophy of like they're there right in front of you. And then for me, it also helped because I'm a numbers person. When I broke down the acquisition cost per year of somebody coming in the door was about the price of a drop in anyway. So that's the whole point of them. It's like, yes,
Yeah.
go ahead and sell them the intro in that, you know, with the difference in mind and try to get them going. So
That's
That's a
actually
good number to know.
so That's actually so helpful, Carol. I just had a little breakthrough for my own business because like right now it's just too literal. Like we always try and upgrade a buddy. Um, but if they come on free, then we like upgrade with like the regular friends and family like referral discount, but if it's a guest like drop in like it's purchased, then we take that off. And I'm just like, no, just act like everybody, even if it was free, bought the $30 drop in. That's
Yeah.
100% what we should do, and that's like a total brainwave for me. Thank you, Carol. That's
makes it easy
obviously
for the team.
exactly, and
Yeah,
that's
no,
it's
yeah.
too confusing for the team, and I've been trying to solve for this for like, oh God. um yeah, this is classic. This is a classic Bridget, like taking things to like black and white sometimes. And like just
Too much
not
detail,
solving
maybe.
a problem. Like, well, sometimes like I was just saying this to Greg last night. I was like, this is a particular way in which I'm dumb. And I don't take, it's fine. I'm not saying it self-deprecatingly, but like there is a particular way in which I'm dumb. And it's that like a great example is my dog used to drink out of the toilet all the time. And I would like try and keep the door closed, but I would, you know, it's hard to remember to close the door, whatever. And I would just be yelling at him like, Doran, quit it. I'm just like so upset. And I'm just like, I don't know what to do. He's drinking out the toilet. And someone was like, and they just put, and I was like, what? And then something else like that just came up. I can't remember what it was. It was just last night, which made me think of it. But it's just like this just particular way of being dumb. I'm very smart in other aspects of my life. This particular way. Okay, so that's me sorted for that. Uh,
I think we've all got one of those like my
yeah.
brain just doesn't line things up in
Yeah,
this
it's everyone's
category
dumb in
as
some
easily.
way. That's a
Yeah.
religious belief of mine. Everyone is dumb in some way. You just have to figure
Yeah.
out which way you're dumb so you know when to ask for help.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
It's so true. Yeah, I think simplicity with some of this stuff happens too. But a lot of the time, this drop-in conversation, to me, what it demonstrates is lack of a larger perspective or a larger plan.
Yeah.
You're looking at it only on the like, oh, I made $30 versus this member paid me $15 for this class. And that's what you're comparing. But you're not looking at this $30 person came today and then never came back again, ever. And this $15 class, they came back tomorrow and the next day and the next and the next. And for 6 months from now, you know, or zooming back out high enough to be like, Carol, to your point, like someone gets their butt all the way here. It costs me $50 to get someone through and onto the intro normally. So if this person's standing right in front of me, like, what the fuck have I got to lose? It's not actually, like, I'm not making money off the intro at full price or a discounted price anyways. You don't make money off intros.
Right.
Your first offer is just to get them going. But then even to that point, the other detail I would add is like, sometimes I ask owners the question, because this was an epiphany that I had way early on, like in the first studio I was managing. Because that was a studio where like the core thing they sold were drop-ins.
Mm-hmm.
They sold a shit ton of drop-ins, and we made a shift while I was there. And whatever, the perspective was, if someone gets their ass all the way here and they are physically standing in front of you and you don't successfully sell them your intro, how are you going to get them to a habitual practice?
Yeah, exactly.
Like all the weight is on them to be like in one class, just fall in love with it and come back and pay again and do that 3 more times and then come up to you and be like, sell me this thing.
Yeah.
How likely is that? Like, or the simpler way to say all this is just, if you don't sell someone your first offer, whatever your intro is, versus you just sell them a drop-in from a first visit perspective, they literally don't even go in your sales pipeline.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know about you guys, but if you've ever picked up the phone and phoned someone who did a drop-in yesterday at your studio, and you're like, hey, Bridget, I know you did a drop-in yesterday. Did you want to buy this next thing? Like, assuming you even get them on the phone at all, because they likely don't answer, because they don't feel like they need to answer, because they don't have any obligation with you. Mm-hmm. That is a real tough conversation. Like, not tough, whatever, but like to close something and get them back, like fucking hard. It's really hard.
Like they put their wallet away. They're not like, there's nothing. It's over. It's over. Yeah. Well, should we talk banking?
Let's talk about money, banking, accounting.
What you're gonna do with all your drop-in money? How you're gonna organize?
When you sell a bunch of drop-ins, yeah. I think it does tie into what we're saying, that like what you're selling obviously impacts your margins, etc. But then there's total revenue, there's your margins, there's your cash flow. So you got to manage all this stuff. Carol, I'll let you jump in, but I do have to say I'm a bit surprised. There seems to be 3 camps of owners that I experience. Camp number 1, smallest camp, super nerds with numbers, like just like to the point that they actually seem to very often distract themselves from doing any of the practical on the ground actions in the business, because they spend all of their time in their numbers and accounting and QuickBooks and whatever.
Oops, we found one.
We found one. And the risk, it's like good to know your numbers, obviously, we'll talk about that, but just the risk of that is that becomes your technique for distraction and procrastination. Because it feels like you're doing something, but you're like, it's not actually, at some point, you're not actually doing anything anymore. Camp number 2 is the like, you know, your standard middle of the road. I vaguely have something. I got a bookkeeper. We're like, is the bookkeeper good? They're like, I don't know. Like I kind of know, I kind of don't, but like something's happening at least. And then the third camp that's, I think, surprising for new coaches, I know it surprised me, is the camp that's like just doesn't fucking do anything. No, they have no idea and they're doing nothing. And they're like, I don't get why you even do something. So that's what I've seen.
Yeah. And the third is what came up for me recently with the clients, kind of like, I've had a couple, but they're either not doing anything and they want to, but they don't really even know where to start, or they're just like, why do I even need to do this? And I think it's pretty obvious why you would need to, because, well, any place that you're not sort of engaged or understand is a part of the business that you potentially have room to be kind of misled, or I don't know, taken advantage of in a way. Yeah. And so I, I think the middle of the road too that I've seen are the people that they understand why they need to have their transactions recorded, but they don't reconcile at the end of the month. They're not really paying attention to like keeping them clean. And that can lead to a whole host of issues too. On the side, I work with my mother, who is a bookkeeper. And so I help with reconciling and all these things. She's like, you know how many times I go clean up somebody's books and they've had their payroll entered twice? Or, it throws off the taxes that you pay. It throws off, end of year reconciliation. Just like, it's so important to keep clean books. And then what I found for myself is like, again, I am the category one number nerd. I can't even talk, so I'm thinking numbers. But when we went to sell, you have to have those books on point in order for somebody to see very cleanly what you're making, where are all those accounts going. And now with like the rules, at least in the US, you're also sending in bank statements to make sure that your books match what the bank says, because they're not going to just take your books as, as God. They want to make sure everything's matching. And yeah, and that your taxes, I don't know, it's so important. And I'm very shocked when studio owners are kind of like, yeah, send my numbers off, and like we just need a simple P&L, and they have to wait weeks for their bookkeeper to send them something. And I just can't. Like, so people, it's very simple, especially now because QuickBooks Online will connect to your bank account and make it really, really simple for you. I don't know. I just feel like, and in fact, I think there's a new AI tool that you can send QuickBooks receipts and it will automatically upload into your accounts. So yeah, it's a new feature. And I think it's on like beta testing or something, but
Then
yeah,
there must be different than I'm thinking of, because you could always email them to your.
well, now it knows exactly like which, like it's scanning it and putting it in based on previous like
It's like you literally
entries
just
you
take a
have.
picture of it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, well now would be a pretty good time for me to come clean that I am definitely category 2 or 3.
Category 2. That's normal. Everyone's
Yeah,
category 2.
I am category 2. And I will, so I just wanted to represent anyone who might be feeling embarrassed. Um, I have always, I have always done, I have always had an accountant and a bookkeeper. Um, but, you know, I can't remember if it's Carol or Josh saying, but like, if you ask them if their bookkeeper's any good, they say, I don't know. And I would bet the answer is no. Like your
Yeah.
bookkeeper probably isn't that good, not because your bookkeeper's not trying to scam you, but it's really hard to just be a general bookkeeper because every industry is so different. Looking up the POS system in a restaurant versus a bus company versus a yoga studio. Like every single one of those is so different. I have been through like the ringer with accountants and bookkeepers over the course of my 8 years in yoga studio ownership. This is the first year that I have a specialized bookkeeper for our industry. It's really fucking expensive compared to all the other ones, which is why I waited so long. But I should have done it way longer ago. It's totally worth it. It's just such an obvious thing that you need, and you really should be looking for an industry specific person to do your books. Like unless they're like an absolute savant level, like I can do anything, which I've never met. Um, you're like I found out that my bookkeeper and therefore and then my accountant, actually my accountant caught a bunch of things because my accountant for the last 2 years has been industry specific. And she called me and was like, hey, just FYI, I noticed a bunch of shit was not categorized correctly in your QuickBooks this year. And then I had to pay her extra to go through and whatever. So that's why I switched to this other company. this year, but it's really normal to not know about these things. And I do not find QuickBooks easy. I do not. I've had QuickBooks for a long time. I don't find it easy to reconcile transactions. That is not easy for me. And I think part of being a good entrepreneur is understanding every aspect of your business and having a hand in it. And it's also about figuring out what your limitations are, what like actually brings you happiness and joy in life, and outsourcing the things that do not. As again, as long as you've got
Yeah.
experts that you trust on the other side of that.
When you know just enough to know that they're experts, like you, and you can
Exactly.
speak to them. It's that idea, like you don't have to become an absolute master of all of these different skills when you own a business, but you do actually have to acquire a certain base level of knowledge across all of them, because that's what empowers you to do things correctly. So, and that bar of how much you need to know or understand changes over time based off the necessity of your business as well. In the beginning, you need to understand that you have to account for things. You need to understand bookkeeper versus accountant. You need to understand your taxation bracket, blah, blah, blah. But like, that's kind of it. But then later on down the line, you might want to follow a specific cash flow model. Like, you're going to switch to profit first. You want to have, or you're going to sell the business and you want a 2-year runway in front of you where the books look. So like you restructure the way you actually do things. So it changes over time. But I think in the end, like, a lot of the bookkeeping side of things, if you're in the category 2, 3, where it kind of stresses you out, I think two things happen. One is you don't realize how empowering it actually is to get kind of good at this. Like, if you just know what the fuck's happening in your business, and we see this all the time. 90% of people who get on a free coaching call with us, even if their business is very successful, it's not about success or not, they can't answer really basic questions. What do you pay yourself monthly? No answer.
Yeah, definitely.
What was your
Yeah.
profit margin last year? No answer. What's your total expense load per annum, per month, per anything? No answer. Oh, I would have to look it up. And then, Carol, to your point, then it's like, cool, like, let's jump in and look at it. Well, what do you mean? Like,
Right. I don't
what
know
what
where.
software do you guys use? Well, we use QuickBooks. I'm like, cool, we'll log in. Well, I don't know what the log is. Only my bookkeeper has that.
Yeah.
What? Like, okay, well, where's the P&L your bookkeeper sent you last? Oh, I don't know. I'm still waiting. They send us one a quarter only, and I haven't got mine from 2 quarters ago yet.
Yeah.
Let me email them. I'm like, email? But so it just,
Perfect.
we don't realize that it's like taking a part of your business, a really important part, because it's literally the true money part of it, and then just hiding it from you if you don't get some of this together.
Yeah.
And so, in the more worst case scenario, I think that then it becomes this secret stressor for an owner.
Exactly.
And the behavior becomes, I'll put my head in the sand. That's the, like, why does this matter? It's like, if
Yes.
I was to look at this, I would have to feel what it makes me feel, or I would have to do something about it. And instead, can't I just be like, people paid me today, and then I used my credit card to whatever, and I run my car through the business anyways, and I run my groceries through the business anyways. No,
Oh.
but seriously, like, I think there's a large portion of small business out there in the studio world too, um, that, like, the business is the management tool for the owner's personal finance, not actually, and you're not your business. Like, you, these are separate things, but
Really.
that's what they've done. So then they kind of just don't care to look at it because they're not optimizing for something. And they're like, yeah, I don't make any money in cash, but all these things are covered,
Yeah.
which you can't sell that business, first off. And if you want to grow it, forget it. Like, it's going to be really hard.
Yeah. It is so I think for so many of us it is the fear. Like I was always just really afraid to look at stuff. And I also want to say, like, if you are in this position right now, like in any aspect of your business. If you're in any part of your business burying your head in the sand, it's okay because it is possible to get out of anything. Like I don't know why this is like the theme of today, but I was an idiot about so many aspects of my business. Like I actually can't think off the top of my head anything I was particularly good at when we first opened. Maybe teaching yoga, maybe
Hmm.
um creating community. And even then I wasn't that good at teaching yoga. I had only been a teacher for a few years. Um Making people feel welcome in my space. I was really good at that. But other than that, I wasn't good at anything. And I thought for a long time that it was just too hard to get good at anything. I even tried to sell my business actually,
Hmm.
um, right after COVID because I was like, well, now it's for sure. Like, I just don't know how to do any of this. And that is when I started coaching with the YC actually. And I learned about everything in my business. I'm still learning. Actually, Josh and I just were talking about my marketing and how I needed to not bury my head in the sand about some marketing that we're doing right now. I'm still learning to about more and more aspects of my learning deeper about aspects of my business, but I just want to say that like it feels overwhelming because you're thinking about every single aspect of your business that you don't understand.
Mm.
Just take it one thing at a time and start to peel back those layers. And getting a great bookkeeper would be a really cool place to start, I think. Right after you make your drop in really expensive and your intro offer, a no-brainer. Yeah.
Heck yeah.
Yeah.
Great
I
advice,
think I
Bridget.
think it's I think it's one of the most empowering things you can do in your business is to get your banking books tax
Yeah.
situation. If you get that really set up well, it just I don't know, there's a security that comes with it. Carol, what is that fear? Like why do people what are they scared of? I relate to it too. I've had this fear too in businesses that I've had, but just
I'm trying to, because the numbers part never was the scary part to me. I'm trying to think of other scenarios where I just sort of buried my head in the sand. I think it's the fact that you know you're going to have to do something that's outside your comfort zone,
mm,
like
yeah.
whether it's confronting a teacher or looking at like we're creatures of habit and staying in this one little box that we think we live in, and like so maybe that has something to do with it. Just as a side note, I will say we used a friend as our accountant the first couple years and then realized like that probably wasn't the best thing. Years later, he was arrested for embezzling from another company $2.5 million. So, you
Dodged a
can
bullet.
even,
Yeah.
oh, we totally, yes. So, yeah, I think that people, they're maybe they don't think they can do it. Like Bridget said, that's like, I just don't think that I have the capacity for it, or there's so many things to focus on. It's hard to say what that is exactly for each individual, but I know for me, it's like, I think I'm the type of person I don't feel like I'm an expert until I've done every research that all the research that I can, like I want to be like fully aware. So even saying that I'm some kind of expert in QuickBooks is like, ooh, I don't I don't think
Bro,
so, but
I didn't invent QuickBooks, so I couldn't be an absolute.
exactly. So I can't be an expert. Um, but yeah.
Fear of the unknown, fear of having to take action, fear of change.
I think
Mhm.
it's the animal fear of like like money is like an animal base
Yeah.
fear because it's so security. And like for me, like the tax stuff is so scary because it's like this scary authority that's gonna tell you like you did something bad and your like livelihood is money. And so it like gets at that like basest level
Mm,
security and fear and makes you act crazy.
yeah.
Um, because that's just the wrong part of your nervous system that you want to be operating your business from.
I think that's correct. And then so like how do you escape that? One, like you first off, you have to understand it more. Like you have to understand it to the place where it's not scary because you have understanding. The fear of the unknown, take that away. And then the thing that's coming to mind for me is control. And this is something that uh, before we jumped on, I was commenting to you guys as a Canadian too. I'll get into the details in a second. That like control, not from a like controlling way, but control in like I should be able to build a machine that creates the scenario that I want. So in the States right now, for example, you've got your CRM, then you've got a payment processor. It's going to pay you out. That's going to drop into a bank account. But now with these fintech companies too, like you can drop that into Relay, and then you can build in Relay, the online bank, the entire automation set for Profit First, for example. You can just say, money comes in here, and then it automatically off of percentage goes boop, 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 boop to all these other places. Like here's the team pay account, here's this. And that just happens for you automatically. Every dollar coming in gets split up, including the like rainy day fund and your taxes account and whatever. And then off the back of that, it's like, because then you can have like a specific credit card set up that you use for the business and virtual cards that you have for your team. So they're able to actually do things without having to get you to buy everything and put limitations on that and warnings. Like you can automate and set up a lot of this. So that's like the cash flow management. I'm setting an engine up that does something. Then on the bookkeeping side, that all connects to QuickBooks. But then your bookkeeping and accounting side for taxation, that's like a separate parallel game that's taking place as well. And same thing, like how you structure there drastically changes what happens in your business and how you would choose to operate. Um, I'm going to have the names wrong for the states, but like most of the businesses that we're working with are either LLC or C Corp.
Yeah.
But like there are other options as well. There's a few B Corps actually that are trying to be anyways. Um, but like that changes how things flow through. We have owners that they went virtual, and so like they changed the state that they're registered in because of the tax differential.
Sure. Yeah.
Like there is a game to be played there, but it's not about playing the game so much as the control part of like you should be able to draw a picture of it. I think you should be able to whiteboard or like on one page draw a picture of cash comes into my banking system and then this is what happens with it next.
Yeah.
Cash comes into my accounting system to QuickBooks and this is where it goes. Like that's the categorization and everything. This is what happens with it. In order to maintain that, I just need to do these three things. Take a photo of my receipt, send it to this AI to let it categorize it, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
The complaint I'd make as a Canadian is half of what I just described, we can't do it. Like we have QuickBooks and there's the same automations there or whatever. Not the same, but close to the same. But like the banking cartel of Canada is just like not light years behind what you can do in the States. Even really simple things you wouldn't think of, like what credit cards we have. I have the best business credit cards that you can get at my business level in Canada, full stop. And they suck. They barely do anything.
Yeah.
Versus the comparable card in the States. It's like, I think we did a calculation once between travel and cash back and stuff. Like I would have made $5,000 or something last year just if I had this one Amex card or something like that. Like funny things like that.
Totally.
Yeah. So it is a little bit depends on where you are too.
Yeah, every country is so different with banking practices, which is always so shocking. Like, and in some ways, America is way behind. Or I don't know if it's way behind in other ways like that, but like in the UK and in Australia, like you don't have Venmo and PayPal, but that's good because what you have instead is just bank transfers. You just transfer people money from your bank to their bank. There's no fee, there's nothing. It's just your money and their money, and it's literally just like the easiest thing in the world. And we think we're so sleek with Venmo, but it's like, that's stupid because
Yeah.
now we're paying some other entity to like pass back and forth our money.
You're just
Um,
making PayPal billions of dollars a
yes,
year by doing it.
exactly.
Yeah.
But we
Yeah.
just want to split the bill for dinner, you know? So, yeah, it's crazy how every country is so different. But we're switching to Relay. My goal is the beginning of 2026. I'm really excited about it. It was encouraged by our new fancy bookkeeper. And do you know what's so great is the bookkeeper I'm working with right now, she has another client that uses Walla, which is crazy. Like it took me years to explain to past bookkeepers like what Walla even is, you know?
Yeah.
And instead this person like she's already familiar like with Walla, like what happens inside Walla. It's just so it really is just like a relief and like a deep breath and um yeah, just really excited.
That's like an industry level complaint that we've all had, but I would just make again right now. Like Wall is the best one out there, in my opinion, generally. There's some specific details that you have to decide on. But there are no management systems. I'm trying to think if this is correct. There was maybe one. There are none that like link to QuickBooks properly.
Right. That would be so great. Hmm.
That the fact that that is the case is bananas. I mean, I'm sure that it's technically very difficult. Absolutely. But like, that's insane.
Right. It would
Every single one of these businesses, like 80% are going to use QuickBooks or zero,
yeah. Yeah, that would be so sick if Walla just integrated. It'd be amazing.
right? I have some buddies who live in Scandinavia, and we were talking about tax. They were in Canada. We were talking about tax in Canada and versus there and whatever, whatever. And there's this in North America, we have this narrative that it's like, oh, it's so high taxation there.
Hmm.
And it is, but like what you get for it is like it kind of it's it's not high taxation apples to apples. You can't compare it because our system of how taxation even happens or whatever versus what you get there and how that works are so vastly different. The point being of this automation part, like my Swedish friend is like, you don't, what do you mean file taxes?
Yeah.
They
They don't,
send me a letter and tell
yeah,
me what the taxes are.
yeah,
I
that's
don't
how
do
it is
anything.
too.
Like you think about that, we have entire industries of accountants and bookkeepers and whatever else that exist because we have to manipulate all of this, and you're playing this fucking weird gray zone game on, like because it's not
So,
even what's true, it's what you can prove, and there's interpretation of tax law in here, and like
oh my God,
it's
it's so crazy.
it's so
Greg,
crazy. Yeah.
it was such a rude awakening for Greg. My husband is from the United Kingdom. He's Scottish, and we lived in America for the last few years. And so he went from the UK just like making a regular job, like it would be comparable to like an employee, like a W-2 or whatever. And then not only was it he came to the States and then it's like already more complicated, even though the W-2 is obviously the easiest thing. You just pretty much plug in the numbers and stuff. But he was married to me and we were filing jointly, and I have like the most complicated taxes like in the world because I'm an LLC and S corp designation, and so like I need to get everything there, have other income that comes from other places, and it was like a months long process. And Greg was like, "What the actual fuck?" Like they just nobody. This is not. Oh, he was almost
Yeah,
as bad as I found out about healthcare. That was a tough
it's a
conversation
weird
too.
yeah, it's a weird thought, but here would be the advantage, like here's the flip side of it is, especially in the United States, Canada too, um here in Mexico, no, the system's really fuckity crazy here.
Mhm.
UK, I would imagine a tiny bit. I don't actually know it as much, only from the studio side. But like the system is set up for small business or
Yeah,
business in general.
for sure.
Like that's the theoretical advantage is like there is a game to be played, it is annoying, but then if you are a business, there's like there's something you can do, versus if you're just a W-2 employee, like you made
Yeah.
this and you're taxed at this, and like you're kind of limited in what you can do.
Totally. And it's a philosophical like conundrum, at least for me, of like, yeah, it's easier if the government tells me what I owe, but also like it's not your fucking
Do I
like
want
I
that?
tell you what
Yeah.
I owe. Like what do you
Yeah.
like I need to
Yeah.
know what you're charging me for, like you want so there's definitely like a
Yeah.
thing, and it's unfair that like people in the states that make below minimum wage, and then they have to like pay for an accountant or whatever. That's fucked up. But so it's all sorts of it's complicated.
Yeah, it does become almost philosophical. Something to that line, debate, like what the right way to do anything is. But
Better.
that stuff aside, I would just say the positive note of all of this conversation is like, if you're the person who's got your head in the sand on this, or it freaks you out, it's going to take you a minute. It might take you a whole year to get it together. That's the truth.
Totally.
Like, there's no rush either. But like, if you pull your head out of the sand, start to understand this, start to build a system, like, what do you even want to build as a system? Figure out the tools to do that. Even with your taxation of things, like, it can actually be really good.
Yeah.
To
Oh my
Carol's
God.
point, like, one, you don't miss things like double payroll, which would totally fucking screw your cash flow. But it's not uncommon for us to have, especially when you get to like 3 locations of yoga studios. We've seen it multiple times where we do a bookkeeper accountant switch and a cash flow management switch, and their revenue is more or less the same, or we adjust for the revenue shift, but their profit like goes way up, or like suddenly the owner is paying themselves more. Because some, as an owner too, it's like if you're at that weird level where like you make $5,000 a month, $6,000 a month, you're like, I'm making some money, I'm okay, depending on where you're at, not in like a major city, but like something's coming in. But then all of a sudden, because you make 10% more revenue, but then you keep 10% more, and now you're personally bringing in $8,000 a month, $10,000 a month, like that's that's a massive difference
Yeah.
about your
Yeah.
business. And that can happen by getting smart about that stuff. So
Yeah. Exactly.
okay,
Okay.
I don't think we want to open up any worms. Any more worms. If you're watching this and you're like, I have no fucking clue where to start with this stuff,
Yeah.
and you're going to send us a message afterwards and say, Josh, who's the accountant that you recommend? I don't have a one-time go-to one. We do have a couple on the list, so you can send us a note on it. But like, this is more of a, it depends on where you are and what you're trying to create standpoint. What we can help you with, what we do coach towards, is just how do you practically approach this as a project? The project being the financial branch of my organization. I got to get my shit in order. Let's do that. We absolutely coach through that and can talk through some cash flow models and etc. to figure this stuff out. So
Yeah.
let us know.
Scared. We'll hold your hand.
We'll hold your hand all the way through. All right. Well, that's a wrap on this week's Weekly Roundup. Tune in every Friday here on Facebook, or subscribe to Studio Cult TV on Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you're listening from. And we will see you next week.
Bye.
Peace.
Bye.